Episode 3, The Yard Keeps Records, Nell Harrow. By morning, the hotel had gone back to pretending. That is one of the things buildings do best. They creak, dry out, take the light differently, and by breakfast they have persuaded everyone involved that the night was mostly inconvenience with a side order of nerves. Towels had been brought, carpets blotted. 2 guests had checked out early in the sort of offended silence people use when they want compensation and a story to dine out on later. Aaron had developed the 1,000-yard stare of a man reconsidering hospitality as a concept. Elise had put on lipstick, which in her case meant things were dire. Room 14 was locked, not because a lock would stop anything important, but because people like symbols of control, and hotels run on symbols almost as much as they run on bleach. I stood at the end of the corridor with a paper cup of coffee that tasted like burnt apology and looked at the door. The carpet outside had dried in a darker line where the water had spread. The bulbs had been replaced. The wall above the bed, according to Aaron, had come up strange when maintenance tried to repaint it. The plaster would not take the emulsion properly. The stain kept returning through the white in the shape of a faint, looping curve. A knot, fading. Yes. Gone? No. Elise came up beside me carrying a folder she did not need. Hotel manager camouflage. "You look awful," she said, "and so do you." "Lipstick helps." "Not enough." She gave me a tired look that might have become a smile in a kinder genre. Neither of us mentioned sleeping. There had not been much of it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the corridor filling with drowned men and the black-coated figure going backwards into the dark like history refusing burial. Every time Elise closed hers, if the tremor in her hands meant what I thought it did, she was 8 again at the river. She held out the folder. "What's that?" "Things Nan kept." That got my attention. I took it from her. Cheap cardboard. Elastic band gone slack with age. It smelled faintly of dust and old paper and the sort of cupboard people use for things they do not want to throw away, but do not want to explain either. "Where did you find it?" "In Mum's loft boxes. I drove over at 6. "You went alone?" "Yes, Nell, because clearly my judgment is excellent." I looked at her. She rubbed one thumbnail against the side of the folder. A tell from childhood. Elise only does that when she is frightened enough to become precise. "I couldn't sit downstairs with the breakfast trays," she said. "I needed to do something." Fair. I slipped the elastic free and opened the folder. Inside were photocopies, clippings, 2 handwritten notes in Nan's tight slanted script, and 1 folded sheet of lined paper so worn at the creases it looked close to surrender. On top sat a newspaper cutting, local and yellowed, the headline half missing. "River works delayed after..." The rest had been torn away. Below it a photograph. Black and white, poor quality, river yard fencing, men in caps, a crane arm in the background, mud everywhere. On the back, in Nan's handwriting, "Not an accident. Ask who signed the removal order." I felt the back of my neck go cold. Elise. "I know." "No, I don't think you do." I handed her the photo and took up the folded lined paper. It was not a letter, more a list. Names down one side, dates on the other. Some crossed through, some circled. Beside 3 of them, a single initial. R. At the bottom, underlined twice. The bookkeeper is never first. I read that twice. Then a 3rd time because sometimes the dead leave you a message and sometimes your grandmother does, and the second can be worse. "Elise, did Nan ever mention anyone called Rook?" She shook her head. "Not directly. She used to say things like, 'There's always a man with clean hands somewhere near the river.' I thought she meant developers, or counsellors, or men in offices generally." She probably did. And she probably meant one in particular. The corridor behind us stayed stubbornly ordinary. A vacuum cleaner whined somewhere downstairs. A guest laughed too loudly at something forgettable. Daylight through the landing window made everything look flatter, safer, more embarrassed by itself. I have never trusted daylight much. It hides better than dark. I turned another page. A map fragment. Old survey print, the river bend, the yard, a row of marked storage sheds long since demolished. One section had been ringed in red pen. Near the waterline, written in the margin, below the timber, not in the hotel. The hotel only repeats it. That matched what Rook had said. Nearest wound, not the beginning. I felt something settle into place then, not comfort exactly, but shape. The hotel had been an echo chamber because something at the old yard had been disturbed. Ground opened. Memory loosened. The dead nearest the break came first. The sailors, the workers, the men used and hidden. Rook had followed because men like that always follow the records. Not to confess, to control. What now? Elise asked. I looked at the map. We go to the yard. She laughed once, short, joyless. Of course we do. You don't have to come. Yes, I do. No. She turned to me properly then, folder still in one hand, lipstick too neat for the night she'd had. Yes, she said, I do. He knew my name. He was there when I was 8. And if Nan cut something out of my memory, I'd quite like to know what else my family decided I could live without. There are moments when arguing with Elise is like trying to close a drawer with a brick in it. Possible, but only if you enjoy damage. So I said, fine. She narrowed her eyes. That easy? No, I'm just tired. That, at least, was true. We went downstairs and found Aaron behind reception pretending to read an incident form while actually staring into the middle distance. He looked up as we approached and immediately looked like he regretted it. Please tell me you're checking out, he said. We need a favour, I said. He closed his eyes briefly. That was my second guess. Elise leaned on the desk. Do we still have the old maintenance keys? The ones for the service gate behind the car park? Aaron blinked. Why? Because the fence line backs onto the old river path? I said. No, that wasn't a question. It should have been. Aaron. He looked between us, saw that neither face contained anything resembling self-preservation, and exhaled through his nose. There's a gate, he said, padlocked. It leads to the strip behind the bins and then down toward the old embankment, but the yard itself is fenced off. Developers put steel hoarding up last month. Good, I said. He stared. In what world is that good? In the world where fences tell you where people don't want questions. That is not a reassuring sentence. Most true ones aren't. He reached under the desk, produced a tagged key, and held onto it for a second before letting go. If I help you, he said carefully, am I helping in the normal sense, or the sort of helping that ends with me in therapy? Yes, I said. Elise took the key. Aaron watched her. You shouldn't go back there. Something in his tone made me look up. Why? I asked. He hesitated. Then, because my granddad used to talk about that stretch of river. He worked deliveries when he was young. Said there were places along the bank where the dogs wouldn't go. Said the old men called it the counting edge. The lobby seemed to lose a degree of warmth. Elaborate, I said. Aaron swallowed. That's all I remember. That and one other thing. What? He said if you ever heard knocking under wood near the water, you walked away and never answered it. Elise went very still. Of course she did. I said, your granddad ever mention Rook? Aaron frowned. No, but he did mention a clerk, someone who kept books for the yard owners before the place shut down. Said men were more frightened of him than the river, which didn't make sense to me when I was a kid. It does now, Elise muttered. We left the reception desk with the key and Nan's folder and the sort of plan that only makes sense to people who have already had a bad night and would rather continue than sit still with it. Outside, the air had that washed-out late-morning quality Peterborough does so well. Pale sky, damp breeze, gulls where gulls have no business being, and the faint smell of traffic trying to impersonate progress. The hotel car park backed onto a service lane lined with bins, patched tarmac, and a chain-link gate furred with rust. Elise unlocked it. The hinges complained. Beyond lay a narrow path between scrub and broken fencing, sloping down toward the river behind the hotel's polished public face. From up front, the Fenland Arms sold breakfast and clean sheets. From the back, It remembered what the land had been before hospitality learned to smile. We walked in silence. The river showed itself in fragments first. A flash of grey through reeds, a smell of mud, the sound of water moving with no interest in us at all. Then the path opened, and the old yard came into view beyond the hoarding. Steel sheets, warning signs, temporary barriers. A digger standing idle behind them like an animal interrupted mid-feed. And there, just beyond the fence line, half sunk in churned mud, stood the remains of old timber posts. The jetty, or what was left of it. Elise stopped walking. I didn't blame her. Memory is one thing in a corridor. Another thing entirely when the place itself is waiting where you left it. You all right? I asked. No, she said. Carry on. Reasonable. I stepped closer to the fence. The ground inside the site had been disturbed recently. Deep tracks, torn earth. A section near the old posts had collapsed inward, leaving a dark hollow where the mud had given way. Not a sinkhole, a void. Below the timber, the hotel only repeats it. I felt the now familiar pressure at the base of my skull. Not a full haunting, not yet. More like a tension turning in our direction from somewhere below ground. Then I saw it. Tied to one of the steel fence panels fluttering in the breeze was a strip of white survey tape. On it, in fresh black marker, someone had written a single word. Recorded. Elise saw it too. Neither of us spoke, because from somewhere under the broken timber by the river's edge, faint but unmistakable, came 3 slow knocks. And this time they were not asking to be remembered. They were inviting us down. We stood by the fence for longer than was sensible. That happens more than people think. Fear does not always make you run. Sometimes it makes you still, makes you listen, makes you try to decide whether the thing calling you is a warning, a trap, or just the truth arriving in a voice you do not like. The river moved past the old yard with the same flat indifference it had probably worn for 100 years. Grey water, brown reeds, mud cut open by machinery. The steel hoarding rattled once in the breeze and settled again. Then came the 4th knock. Not loud, not dramatic, just deliberate. From under the broken timber, Elise let out a slow breath through her nose. Tell me we're not climbing in there. We're not climbing, I said. She looked at me. We're finding a lawful-looking way to make a terrible decision. That's your reassuring voice, is it? It's the best one I've got. I walked the fence line until I found the join in the temporary panels. Fresh chain, new padlock. Mud churned thick around the base where sight boots had gone in and out. On the ground just inside the hoarding sat a white hard hat, half crushed, with the company logo smeared in dirt. Not abandoned neatly. Dropped. That matters. People leave things differently when they expect to come back. I crouched and looked through the gap between the panels. The digger stood 30 feet in, bucket lowered. Beyond it, the collapsed section near the old timber posts had opened into a slanting cavity in the bank. Not a tunnel exactly. More like the ground had given way over something man-made beneath. Timber shoring, brick edge, black space under both. A chamber, or the top of one. The pressure behind my eyes sharpened. I stepped back. Elise. I can see your face. That's never good. There's something built under there. She came beside me and peered through the gap. Storage? Maybe. Or records. Or somewhere they thought water and mud would keep mouths shut. She folded her arms against the cold. You say things like that as if they help. They help me. That is not the same thing. No argument there. I looked again at the survey tape tied to the fence. Recorded. Fresh marker, clean strokes, not old, not weathered. Someone living had written that, which meant one of 2 things. Either somebody on the site had found something and decided to make a joke in very poor taste, or somebody knew exactly what this place was and wanted us to know they knew. I dislike both options for different reasons. A van door slammed somewhere beyond the hoarding. Elise flinched. I turned. At the far end of the service road, a man in a fluorescent jacket was locking up the cab of a site pickup. Mid-50s maybe, thick neck, clipboard under one arm. He spotted us by the fence and stopped dead in the way people do when they recognize trouble before they recognize faces. Then he started walking over. "Brilliant," Elise muttered. "Stay behind me." "Oh, don't be theatrical. He's coming over angry." "So am I." "Fair." The man reached the gate in the fence line and jabbed a finger toward the warning signs. "This is a restricted site." His accent was local, his tone was universal. I said, "Then restrict it better." That bought me half a second of offended silence. "Who are you?" he asked. "Elise manages the hotel. I'm with her." "That tells me nothing." "It tells you enough." His eyes flicked to the hotel key in Elise's hand, then to the folder under her arm, then back to me. He was doing sums. Not legal ones. Risk ones. "You need to move away from the fence," he said. "Ground's unstable." "Because you opened something?" I asked. His jaw tightened. There was a subsidence issue. "Under the old jetty?" No comment. "That's not how normal builders talk." He took a step closer. "Listen carefully. We had a minor collapse yesterday. Work stopped. Engineers are assessing it. That's all you need to know." "Then why is there marker tape on your fence saying recorded?" Elise asked. That landed, only slightly, but enough. His eyes moved to the tape, just for a second, and he hadn't seen it before. Useful, he recovered quickly. "Kids." "No," I said, "not kids." He looked at me properly then. Not annoyed now, measuring. "You from the council?" "Do I look that disappointed in life?" Elise made a sound that might have been a cough, hiding a laugh. The man ignored it. "You need to go." "What did you find under the timber?" I asked. "Nothing." "Then why did one of your men leave a hard hat in the mud and not come back for it?" He said nothing. "Why did work stop?" "Safety." "Whose?" That did it. He came right up to the fence, close enough for me to smell stale coffee and wet nylon. "You don't know what you're poking at." "No," I said, "that's why I'm asking." His face changed then. Not much. Just enough. Irritation gave way to something older and less manageable. Not fear, exactly. Recognition. He looked past me to Elise and said very quietly, "You shouldn't have come back." Everything in me went still. Elise did not move. "Have we met?" she asked. The man blinked as if he had not meant to say it aloud. "No." "You know me?" "No." "Bad liar," I said. He stepped back from the fence. "Go home." Then he turned and walked away too fast for dignity. We watched him cross the site road, get into the pickup and drive off without looking back. Elise stared after him. He knew me. Yes. From when I was 8. Maybe. Or from someone who told him about you. She looked sick. That's worse. Yes. I waited until the truck had gone before trying the service gate farther down the hoarding. Locked, chain newer than the rest. But the panel beside it had been bent slightly at the bottom where machinery had clipped it. Enough to make a gap. Not enough for comfort, enough for us. "Elise." "No." "We're going in." "I know, I'm saying no on principle." "Fine." We squeezed through sideways, catching coat fabric on torn metal and landing ankle-deep in mud on the other side. The site felt different inside the fence. That sounds obvious. It isn't. Places have atmospheres. Most are made of weather, noise, expectation. This one had another layer under it, like a note in a song too low for hearing but strong enough to alter your breathing. The digger loomed to our left. Diesel smell. Wet steel. Fresh gouges in the earth. Ahead, the collapsed bank sloped toward the old timber posts, which leaned out of the mud like rotten teeth. And between them, where the ground had fallen in, the dark opening waited. Closer now, I could see brickwork under the exposed soil. Old engineering brick blackened with damp. A retaining wall, perhaps, or the side of a culvert widened into something else. Timber beams crossed part of the void, swollen and furred with age. Below them, black water moved slowly. Not river water. Standing water. Held. Elise stopped beside me. That wasn't built for boats. No. What was it built for? I looked at the brick lip, the reinforced corners, the iron ring bolts set into the wall. Storage, I said. Temporary holding. Maybe ledgers. Maybe goods. Maybe people, if the wrong men were in charge. She turned to me sharply. You think they kept people down there? I think men who hide records usually hide more than records. The air above the opening was colder than the rest of the site, not metaphorically, actually colder. My skin knew before my mind did. Then came the sound again. Knock, 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 directly below us now. Elise whispered, That's wood. Yes. Something is hitting wood under the water. Yes. That should bother you more. It bothers me exactly the right amount. I crouched at the edge and shone my phone torch down into the cavity. The beam caught water first, then brick, then a slanted timber platform just below the surface, half collapsed and slick with black silt. Something pale lay snagged against it. Paper. No, not paper. Pages. A bundle of them, swollen and fused, trapped under one beam where the water had not quite taken them. And beside that, fixed into the brick wall above the platform, a row of iron hooks. Empty now, mostly. One still held a length of chain. Elise made a noise in the back of her throat and stepped away. I did not blame her. The pressure in my skull sharpened into a pulse, not pain, instruction. Look left. I moved the torch. At first, I saw only brick and roots pushing through mortar. Then the light caught white marks scratched into the wall at shoulder height. Tallies. Dozens of them, grouped in fives, some old, some newer, some cut so deep the brick had chipped. Elise saw them and went rigid. Oh, God. No, I said quietly, not him. She looked at me with real anger then, which was healthy under the circumstances. What is wrong with you? Quite a lot. Stay back. I edged lower, boots sliding in the mud until I could brace one hand against the brick lip. The pages below shifted slightly in the water, not by current, by movement under them. I froze. The water bulged once, then settled. Something down there had noticed us. Not a jump scare, not a lunge. Worse. Attention, the sort that has been waiting. My ring finger started to ache, an old warning, bloodline and nerve and memory all speaking at once. On the wall opposite the tallies, just above the waterline, something dark had been drawn in a looping curve. Not drawn, seeped. The mark. Only this one was larger than before. Not the quick knot shape we'd seen in plaster or stain. This was the full thing, rope crossing itself, tightening. A hangman's knot worked with patient detail in black damp across the brick. Elise saw it and whispered my name. Not Nell, my real one, the one family used when things were serious. I looked back at her. She had gone white. What is it? I asked. She swallowed hard. I remember this place. That landed like a dropped weight. How much? Not all of it. She pressed a hand to her mouth, then forced it down. Nan brought me here. The air seemed to narrow. When? After. After what? She shook her head once, furious with herself. I don't know, I only... She looked at the hooks, the chain, the tallies. I remember her saying not to count out loud. The knocks came again. Faster this time. Not invitation now, impatience. And from somewhere deeper under the timber platform, through water and wood and mud, a man's voice said, clear as anything, "Read it properly." Elise grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. I kept the torch steady. Because caught beneath the beam just above the black water, one page had shifted enough to show a line of ink still legible through the damp. A name. Then another. Then, written in a different hand beneath them both. Omant. Witness. And below that, debt carried forward. I have never liked being told what to do by the dead. The living are bad enough. Still, the voice under the timber had not sounded wild, not like panic, not like rage. It had sounded irritated, corrective, as if we were being slow with paperwork. That, more than anything, made the place feel wrong in a human way. Elise's hand was still locked round my arm. You heard that, she said. Yes. That was a man. Yes. Under the water. Yes. She let go of me as if contact with reason had become unhelpful. I hate how calm you get. I'm not calm. You sound calm. That's years of disappointment. I shifted my footing lower on the mud slope and reached for the nearest length of broken timber lying by the lip of the collapse. It was half rotten but solid enough at one end. I used it to hook the swollen bundle of pages trapped beneath the beam. The first pull did nothing. The second shifted the top sheet just enough to send black water rippling across the platform. Then something knocked back from below. Hard. The timber in my hand jumped. Elise swore and stumbled up the slope. I froze, every nerve lit. The water beneath the platform bulged again, not upward exactly, but with pressure, as if something large had turned below it and settled closer. Then stillness. No splash, no hand, just awareness. The kind that waits for you to continue. So I did, because at a certain point fear becomes administration. I braced one boot against the brick and pulled again. This time the papers came free in a single sucking motion, shedding black water and clotted silt. The bundle slumped against the timber pole, heavy as wet cloth. I dragged it up the slope and onto firmer mud. Elise stared at it as if it might breathe. Reasonable. Up close, it was not a ledger in the proper sense. More a torn section of one, bound once, now split at the spine. Several pages had fused together. Others had survived in warped layers. Ink bled, but not gone. The paper itself was thick, rag-based, older than the hotel by a long way. I crouched over it. The smell hit first. River mud, mould, iron, and under that, something dry and stale, like an attic trunk opened after a death. Elise. Torch. She handed me her phone without taking her eyes off the chamber. I angled the light across the page. Columns, dates, initials, cargo marks, their names. Some had occupations beside them. Boatman, clerk, labourer, boy. No wages listed, no discharge. Just symbols in the final column. A cross, a circle, a short horizontal line, and beside certain entries, in darker ink added later, recorded. Further down the page, one word repeated 3 times in the margin. Witnessed, not signed, not verified, witnessed. Elise crouched beside me despite herself. That's not shipping. No, it looks like accounting. It is accounting. For what? I ran my thumb carefully along the edge of the least damaged page and turned it. The next sheet had fewer names and more notes. Short ones. Functional. The sort written by men who think cruelty becomes cleaner if filed properly. Held pending removal, no family inquiry. Transferred after dark. Witness present. My mouth went dry. Elise read over my shoulder. Witness present. Yes? What does that mean? I did not answer immediately because I already knew and did not want to hear myself say it. Families like mine do not get tied to places by accident. Not over generations. Not with rules, not with marks. We get used. For memory. For proof. For the part respectable men cannot do themselves. I looked at the line again. Witness present. Not witness required. Not witness requested. Present. As if that presence was procedural. As if certain transactions had to be seen. Oh no, Elise said softly. She had got there too. Yes. No. She shook her head hard. Angry now. No, Nan wouldn't. Nan may not have started it. But she knew. Yes. She brought me here. Yes. Her face tightened in a way I had not seen since we were children, and she was trying not to cry in front of adults who had not earned the privilege. She brought me here to do what? Before I could answer, the chamber below us gave a long, low wooden groan. Not structural. Responsive. The chain on the wall moved once, just once. A small metallic shift. Enough. Elise stood up so quickly she nearly slipped. Nell. I know. No, I mean look. I turned. On the far brick wall beneath the full mark, damp had started spreading in thin black lines. At first they looked random. Then they joined, curved, straightened, formed letters the way mould sometimes seems to if you stare too long, except this was faster. Deliberate. The message took shape in front of us, written in seep and river filth across the brick. Not kept. Counted. Elise made a sound I felt in my teeth. I read it twice, not kept, counted. That explained the tallies. Not prisoners, then. Or not only prisoners. People reduced to units. Goods with pulse. Bodies moved through a system with records kept cleaner than consciences. And the Omants? Witness present, to verify, to carry, to make denial harder later. Or perhaps easier, if the witness could be controlled. I turned another page with more care than I wanted to admit. This one had water damage along the bottom, but the top half remained legible. A list of surnames, some local, some not. Beside each, a notation. Paid, owed. Removed. Then one that made the back of my neck tighten. Line attached. Below that, in a different hand again. Finer, neater, almost elegant. Omant line retained for witnessing and transfer of account. Elise took a step back. I heard her breathing change. "What does transfer of account mean?" she asked. I looked up at her. "I think it means if the dead aren't acknowledged properly, the debt doesn't stay with the men who made it." She stared. "It moves," I said. "To us?" "Yes." "That's insane." "Yes. That's not a system. That's a curse." "Most systems are, if you stay in them long enough." She would have snapped at me for that on a better day. Instead, she looked down into the chamber and whispered, "Nan knew." The voice below the timber spoke again. Closer now. "Read the names." Not shouted, not spectral in the dramatic sense, just a man's voice from the wrong place. Elise backed away another step. "Don't." I ignored her and scanned the page. The first few names meant nothing to me. The fourth did. Not because I knew it, because I knew the surname from Nan's notes. Rook, but not the man we had seen. This entry was older, much older. Edwin Rook, clerk to accounts. Beside it, present at adjustment. Below that, squeezed into the margin in darker ink. Son continued, then his. Bloodline, and of course, not just ours. That was the real ugliness of it. The Omants had not been uniquely cursed. We had been paired, bound into the machinery with the family that kept the books. Witness and accountant, memory and denial. Elise saw the name over my shoulder and went still. "Rook wasn't one man," she said. "No, he was a role. Yes." The chamber seemed to deepen around that, as if saying it aloud had unlocked the architecture. A gust of colder air came up from below, carrying the smell of wet rope and old pennies. The water under the platform shifted, not violently, more like several bodies changing position in the dark. I turned another page. This one was nearly gone, but one section had survived. A heading. Accounts carried beyond closure. And beneath it, a list of locations. Not just the River Yard, Whittlesea, March, Wisbeck, Spalding, Boston. Then farther out, Kings Lynn, Grimsby, Hull, a network, not a single wound, a route. A chain of places where goods, men, and debt had moved under different names and the same logic. Elise saw them and said, "It's not just here." No, it was never just here. No. I felt suddenly sharply that we were standing at the lip of something much larger than a family haunting or a buried room under a riverbank. This was infrastructure. Old, ugly, adaptable infrastructure. The kind respectable towns build over and call history once the paperwork goes missing. Then Elise made a strangled sound. I looked up. She was staring not at the ledger, not at the wall, but past me, toward the digger. I turned. At the top of the mud slope beside the machine, 3 men were standing where there had been nobody a second earlier. Not theatrical apparitions. Not glowing, just men in soaked work clothes and river-dark coats, pale with long immersion, watching us with the exhausted patience of labourers kept after hours. The sailors. No, not sailors exactly. Workers, carriers, hands. One lifted his arm slowly and pointed not at us, but at the ledger in my hands. Then at Elise, then down into the chamber. Escort and witness, proceed. And from below, with the weary irritation of a clerk forced to repeat himself, the voice said, "There's another book. There are moments in life when a sensible person would leave. This was one of them. Unfortunately, sensible people do not usually end up ankle-deep in river mud, holding a dead man's paperwork, while 3 drowned labourers point them toward a hole in the ground. So we stayed. I looked from the workers at the top of the slope to the chamber below, then back to the ledger in my hands. "There's another book," I said. Elise gave me a look of pure, exhausted hatred. "Yes, I heard the haunted administrator." "Good, just checking." "Nell." "What?" "We are not going down there." I glanced at the chamber. The black water moved once under the timber platform, slow and thick. "We probably are." "No." "Yes." "No." I looked at her. "Do you want to spend the next 10 years pretending this is over every time a wall stain looks at you funny?" That landed. She hated that it landed. "I hate you," she said. "That's helpful. Hold this." I handed her the torn ledger section before she could object and moved along the edge of the collapse, looking for a safer way down. The chamber had not been built as a dramatic underground crypt. It was practical, functional, which meant there had once been access. People who keep books do not lower themselves into mud for sport. A few feet to the left, half hidden by roots and broken soil, I found the remains of brick steps cut into the retaining wall. Most had collapsed, 2 remained intact, a third was hanging on through stubbornness and old mortar. "There," I said. Elise peered over. "That is not a staircase, that is a lawsuit." "It's enough." "For what? To make a poor decision with structure?" She shut her eyes briefly. "I want you to know this is exactly why people don't trust you." "Noted." I tested the top step with my weight. It held. The second held too, though the brick shifted under my boot with a sound I did not enjoy. I crouched lower, one hand on the wall, and shone the torch down again. The platform below sat at an angle over the black water, supported by crossbeams, and one iron bracket still fixed into the brick. To the right, just above the waterline, a narrow ledge ran into shadow. Storage access, or inspection, or somewhere for a man with a ledger to stand while other men did uglier things. "Elise, pass me the phone." "You already have a phone." "Then pass me yours as well." "Why?" "In case one of us drops one into the 19th century. She crouched and handed it down. Her fingers were cold. "Don't die," she said. "I'll do my best to be inconvenient instead." I stepped down onto the slanted platform. The wood gave under my weight with a wet groan. Water lapped below, black and patient. The smell down there was stronger now. Mud, rust, old rope, mould, and something faintly sweet underneath it all. Decay has layers. So does guilt. I kept one shoulder against the brick and edged along the ledge to the right. The wall was slick with damp. The full mark still darkened the bricks opposite, rope-worked and patient as if it had not appeared but returned. Behind me, Elise said, "Nell?" "Yes?" "If that platform moves, I'm leaving you." "That's fair." A few more careful steps and the ledge widened into a recessed opening in the wall, low and square, half blocked by a fallen timber brace. Not a tunnel. More a storage niche built into the chamber side. My torch caught iron fittings, a broken crate, and a shelf bracket bent under weight, long gone. Then paper, not floating, stacked. Wrapped once in oilcloth that had mostly rotted away. The second book. It sat on the back ledge of the recess, black with damp but intact in shape, as if the chamber had protected it just enough to be cruel. "I've got it," I said. Elise's answer came too quickly. "No, you haven't." "I can see it." "That is not the same thing." She was right, which was irritating. I wedged the torch between 2 bricks for light and reached into the recess. The timber brace shifted as my sleeve brushed it. Dust and damp grit came down into my hair. Then the chamber knocked. Not from below this time, from inside the wall. 3 sharp raps, inches from my hand. I stopped breathing. Above me, Elise made a noise that would have embarrassed her in daylight. The knocking came again. Not warning, direction. I moved my hand left, following the sound, and felt a seam in the brick where one section had been mortared differently. Later work. Concealment work. I pressed. Nothing. Pressed harder. A brick shifted inward with a wet scrape. Behind it was a narrow cavity no bigger than a bread tin. Inside lay a small bundle wrapped in waxed cloth and tied with blackened string. Not the ledger. Something personal. I took that first. Then the book. The ledger was heavier than it looked, swollen but still bound, its leather cover warped and split at the corners. No title. No label. Just the impression of long use. As soon as I lifted it, the water below the platform stirred hard enough to slap timber. The chain on the wall jerked once, and from somewhere beneath my feet the voice said with unmistakable relief, "At last!" I nearly dropped the thing. Nearly. "Elise," I said, very evenly, "move back from the edge." What happened? I have the book. That was not my question. Move. Something in my tone convinced her. I heard her boots scrape up the slope. I turned carefully and made my way back along the ledge, second ledger tucked against my chest, the waxed bundle in my coat pocket. The platform shifted under me once, enough to remind me that gravity remains one of the world's more reliable killers. When I reached the steps, I passed the ledger up first. Elise took it with both hands and swore under her breath. "It's freezing." "So is the room." "No," she said. "I mean freezing." I climbed up after it, and we both moved several feet back from the collapse before either of us spoke. The three workers still stood by the digger. Watching. Not threatening. Waiting for procedure. I hate procedure. Elise set both ledgers down on a patch of firmer ground and stared at the second one as if it might open itself. "What's in your pocket?" she asked. I had forgotten the bundle. That was unlike me. I took it out. Waxed cloth. Old. Carefully tied. Meant to survive damp. Meant to be hidden. Elise looked at it and went pale in a different way. "What?" I asked. "That knot." I looked down. The string had been tied in the shape of the mark, not decorative, deliberate. I untied it slowly. Inside was a child's hair ribbon. Once blue, now greyed with age. A brass hotel button, and a folded note in Nan's handwriting. Elise sat down in the mud without meaning to. I unfolded the note. It was short. Nan had never wasted words when she thought she might be read by the wrong people. "If you are here, then they have opened it again. Do not let them make her count." Below that, after a gap, the first time was enough. I felt the world narrow. Elise did not speak. I read it again, slower this time. Do not let them make her count. The first time was enough. The ribbon, the hotel button, a child brought to witness, not just present, used. "Elise," I said. She was staring at the ribbon. I remember the button. Her voice was thin and far away. "From the hotel?" She nodded once. "Old uniform, before the refurb. Nan pinned it to my coat because she said I had to look proper." The air went colder around us. "Look proper for what?" I asked. She shut her eyes. "For the men." I said nothing, because when memory comes back properly, interruption is vandalism. Her hand rose to her mouth again, then dropped. "She brought me here at night," Elise said. "Not alone. There was another man with us. I couldn't see his face properly. He kept calling Nan Mrs. Omant like he worked for someone better dressed." The workers by the digger did not move. The river did. Slow. Grey. Uninterested. Elise kept staring at the ribbon as if it had become a fuse. "There were names," she said. "That's what I remember now. Men saying names. Nan saying I had to listen. I thought—" She swallowed. "I thought it was church. Or a memorial. Something kind. It wasn't. No." She looked up at me then, furious and frightened and 8 years old for a second. "They made me repeat them." There it was, the actual shape of it, not passive witness. Activation. Transfer. The chamber below gave a low wooden creak, almost like agreement. Elise flinched. "They made me count them back," she said. "Not just names, numbers, tallies. Nan kept saying, 'Steady now, properly, properly.' And every time I got one wrong, the knocking started again. I felt sick, not delicately, properly. The note in my hand shook once before I stopped it. "That's what transfer means," I said. Elise looked at me as if she wanted me to be wrong. "When the account is read and witnessed," I said, "someone in our line carries it, holds it in memory, keeps it from vanishing." "Why us?" "Because someone decided a living witness makes the dead easier to manage." "That's monstrous." "Yes." "It's slavery with paperwork." "Yes." She laughed once then. A horrible little sound. "Of course it is. Of course even the haunting comes with admin." I opened the second ledger. The first page was mostly ruined. The second was not. Different format from the torn section. Cleaner hand. More formal. This was not the working book. This was the summary. The account book. Entries ran in columns under 3 headings. Name, disposition, carried by. My stomach turned. I scanned down the page. Most of the names were strangers. Then I saw one I knew. Not personally. Historically. A surname from Nan's family stories. One of the women named in whispers whenever the Northamptonshire trials were mentioned, and the room went careful. Below it, in the final column, Omant. Then another, Omant, and another. Generations, not one debt. A chain of carried accounts stretching back through riverwork, parish burials, missing labourers, unnamed women, boys with no family inquiry. All of it handed into the same bloodline, like a ledger nobody had the decency to burn. Elise leaned in despite herself. "Read the bottom," she said. I did. At the foot of the page, in the same elegant hand we had seen before, was a note. "When witness fails, account returns to source. Collection follows." We both went still. That was new. That was worse, because it meant the haunting was not simply memory trying to surface, it was a failed system trying to complete itself. If the Omans stopped carrying it, it went back. Back to source, back to the men who made it. Or their line, Rook, which meant the activity at the hotel, the yard, the corridor, the knocks. All of it might not be random escalation. It might be collection. Elise whispered, "Nan didn't just protect us." "No. She interrupted the process." "Yes. And now it's trying to start again." Before I could answer, one of the workers by the digger moved. Just one step, then another. The others followed. Not toward us. Toward the river edge beyond the collapsed chamber. Slow, purposeful. Heads bowed slightly as if returning to labour. I stood. "Elise." She was already watching them. The first worker stopped by a half-buried section of timber farther along the bank and pointed down. The second knelt. The third turned his head toward us, and though his mouth barely moved, I heard him clearly. Not in my ears. In the old place behind them. Not all of them were written. Then the 3 of them were gone. No flash. No smoke. No theatre. Just absence, and the riverbank waiting where they had stood. Elise looked at me. I looked at the ledgers. Then at the place the workers had indicated. Then back at Nan's note in my hand. Do not let them make her count. The first time was enough. I folded the note carefully and put it back in the cloth. Then I picked up the second ledger. "There are names missing," I said. Elise stood slowly, mud on her coat, lipstick still somehow intact. "Of course there are." I looked toward the farther timber. "And whatever isn't written," I said, "is probably what they're most frightened of." For a few seconds after the voices stopped, neither of us moved. The office smelled like the bottom of a lock gate. Wet wood, cold iron, silt. The ledger twitched once under my hand and settled. Elise was still gripping my arm. I looked at the door, then at the thin black line of damp on the carpet. "Right," I said. Elise stared at me. "Right what?" "Right, we're not standing here waiting for them to decide the next step." I took my hand off the ledger. The cover lifted half an inch by itself. I put my hand back down. It stopped. I went to the door and listened. Nothing. Then I opened it. The corridor outside was empty. Patterned carpet, cream walls, framed print of the cathedral, morning light from the stairwell window, no water, no footprints, no men in old river clothes waiting to be invited in. But the air was wrong, cold in the way old cellars are cold. Not temperature, memory. Then I saw it. On the wallpaper, halfway between the office and the stairs, a smear no bigger than a handprint. Not mud, not water, something darker. The shape it left was the knot. From downstairs, the reception bell rang. A living voice called out from the lobby. Elise exhaled. I told her to go and act normal. She did, because habit is stronger than fear when guests are waiting. I took the ledger to my room. By the time I got upstairs, my hand was burning. The mark had darkened across the base of my thumb and into the wrist. I ran cold water over it. The shape stayed. I sat on the bed and opened the ledger again. The page after the instruction page had been stuck. I eased it apart. And there was another paragraph there written in a different hand. At the bottom was an initial. M.O. Margaret Omant. Nan. It read, "A child marked early should be watched. A child who names the drowned should not be corrected in anger. If the second sight settles in both daughters, the elder carries witness and the younger carries threshold. Neither must be left unwarned when the debt returns to collect." Then another note. If the elder begins to hear names not given, keep her from the yard after dark. If the younger opens to them, do not let her answer the third knock. If both marks appear in one season, the account has turned. Do not seek Rook. He is only the hand that carries the book. The door is elsewhere. A knock came at the bedroom door. 2 knocks. Elise. She came in, read Nan's note, and looked up. The door is elsewhere. Yes, I said. I told her I did not think room 14 was the door. The corridor was where it leaked. The void was where it passed. The yard was where this part of it started. Then I said the thing I already knew I hated. Our mother's house. Elise said no at once. But she also told me what I needed. She remembered the locked little sitting room at the back of the house. She remembered our mother going down there late at night. She remembered hearing voices. More than one. Low. Like a radio in another room. And she remembered the knocking. 3 knocks. She never opened it. I believed her. I told her we had to go that day before dark. She fought me on it. Then the room turned cold. The window behind her fogged from the outside in. A single word appeared on the glass. Home. Then beneath it, the knot. The fog cleared. Outside, the car park looked ordinary. Nothing there but our reflections. Elise asked, "How long have we got?" I looked at the ledger, thought of the office, the voices, the smell of river water, the mark burning under my skin. "Not long," I said, and for the first time since this started, I knew exactly where the next part of the story was waiting. Not in the hotel, not in the yard, at home.